After the news summary, we examine consumer confidence on the first day of the Christmas shopping season. Elizabeth Brackett reports on feelings in the Chicago area. We talk to two pollsters about national trends, then discuss the political implications with our analysts, Gergen and Shields. We have a report from the Ukraine on the weekend vote to make the republic independent. And we close with a Roger Rosenblatt essay on life without the nuclear threat.
Funding for the NewsHour has been provided by PepsiCo. Every day we enjoy people being cold to us, cutting us up, getting fresh with us, tearing into us, and calling us chicken. In fact, the more people do it, the happier we are. PepsiCo. And by AT&T. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And by the financial support of viewers like you.
Today was the traditional start of the Christmas shopping season, the traditional make-it-or-break-it time for many in the retail business. Recent surveys show many Americans plan to cut back their shopping because of worries about the economy. President and Mrs. Bush were among the shoppers at a mall in Frederick, Maryland this morning. They had traveled from nearby Camp David in search of gifts for their grandchildren. We'll have more on consumer confidence and the economy right after the news summary. Robin?
The Centers for Disease Control today denied reports that the nation's supply of flu vaccine is nearly depleted. Vaccine distributors told the New York Times and USA Today they had run out because of the early onset of the flu season. CDC officials said shortages have been reported in some areas, but there is still enough vaccine for those most threatened by the virus, the elderly, and people with chronic illnesses. The CDC officials said the latest weekly survey showed early outbreaks concentrated in some Midwestern and Southeastern states. Most of the victims were children.
Israeli Prime Minister Shamir today played down the dispute over a date for the Washington Mideast peace talks. He stuck to his demand that they be delayed 5 days, but left it open to compromise. The talks begin next Wednesday. The Palestinian delegation left today. We have a report narrated by Vera Frankel of Worldwide Television News.
The Palestinian negotiating team set out for Washington, their agenda firmly set. Negotiator Faisal Husseini, who will watch stage 2 of the peace process from the sidelines, has instructed his team to press for a permanent freeze on Jewish settlements. But the more immediate question is whether the Israelis will turn up for the conference. Israel wants the talks delayed by 5 days. A power play Palestinian delegate Hanan Nasrawi said could backfire.
I think that they made a gesture. They were trying to provide a show of force, and they did it. And I don't think they can afford now to be isolated or to be singled out as the one party that's obstructing the peace process.
But Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir denies the delay could jeopardize negotiations.
I don't think that such an issue could bring to the collapse of the peace process. There are too many factors interested in the development and the continuation of the peace process.
Shamir added, however, that Israel may agree to dispatch a low-level delegation to Washington in time for the December deadline.
This afternoon, Israel's ambassador to the United States met with State Department officials in Washington. Afterward, he said his government was reviewing suggestions that might allow the talks to go ahead as scheduled. President Bush today repeated the U.S. intention to reconvene the talks on December 4th, but he said he did not know which parties would show up.
Yugoslavia's federal army pulled out of two key bases in the capital of the breakaway Republic of Croatia today. The army's conciliatory move came as fighting continued in other parts of the republic. Tim Ewart of Independent Television News filed this report from the Croatian city of Osijek, which has been under siege by the federal army.
On the front line outside Osijek, young Croatian volunteers proudly hoist their national flag. It is the symbol of what seems a hopeless struggle. Here on the city's northern front, men of the National Guard, armed with little more than automatic weapons, face an enemy bristling with heavy artillery, tanks and mortars. These soldiers can do nothing to prevent the constant bombardment of Osijek, but they have been able to stall a pincer movement which would surround the city and close all escape routes from it. There is no end to the shelling. It is destroying the city's buildings, none is unscathed, and is sapping its will. The shells and rockets fall indiscriminately and with lethal effect. Each morning, Osijek awakens to count its dead and collect its wounded. They are taken to a hospital, which is itself a frequent target. The shelling claims an average of 10 lives each day. 500 have perished so far. For those who seek to escape, time and opportunity is running out. Bridges are down, and the one road out of town could fall to the Federal Army any day. But amid the loneliness of the front line, Croatia's soldiers continue to kill and be killed.
There was more troubling economic news in the Soviet Union today. The state bank stopped all payments to the national government because it ran out of money. And the Russian Federation claimed temporary control over all Soviet foreign ministry property, including overseas embassies. The Russian announcement said the action was taken because the Kremlin did not have enough money to maintain the foreign ministry. Russian President Boris Yeltsin said in an interview today it would be a serious blow to the Union and Russia if the Ukrainian Republic voted Sunday to secede from the Soviet Union. He said it would affect the terms under which Russia and the other republics signed a new Union treaty. Recent opinion polls have shown strong support for Ukrainian secession, and we'll have more on the upcoming election later in the program.
China freed a student protest leader from jail today. It also exempted a labor leader from prosecution. Both men were organizers of the 1989 Tiananmen Square pro-democracy protests. China's official news agency called the men rioters. It said one was freed because he had shown repentance, the other because he had turned himself in. Secretary of State Baker urged China to release dissidents during a Beijing visit 2 weeks ago.
South African political leaders today cleared the way for negotiations on ending white minority rule. Leaders from 22 political groups met in Johannesburg and agreed to begin talks December 20th aimed at rewriting South Africa's constitution. Efforts to begin the talks had been stalled for months by disagreement between the government and the country's largest black political group, the African National Congress.
Ralph Bellamy died today in Santa Monica, California. The veteran actor appeared in more than 100 films and was perhaps best known for his portrayal of Franklin Roosevelt on the stage and in the movies. His death was caused by lung disease. He was 87 years old. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to consumer confidence, Gergen and Shields, a Ukraine election preview, and a Roger Rosenblatt essay.
First up tonight, as America begins the Christmas shopping season, is the confidence of consumers. This week, new government figures showed that consumer spending in October dropped to its lowest level in 6 months. And a survey by a business research group, the Conference Board, showed confidence in the economy at its lowest point in more than 10 years. The same survey said Americans plan to spend, on average, 3% less this Christmas than last year. To begin with, correspondent Elizabeth Brackett introduces us to some Chicagoans who are definitely unconfident.
Blue collar or white collar, middle class or not, Chicagoans are worried about the economy. Here, as elsewhere, even those with steady jobs have cut back, changed their spending patterns, and are now casting an uneasy eye toward the future.
Things cost too much. Cars cost too much. I went and bought a six-pack of beer the other day. It cost me $4 for a six-pack of beer. I couldn't believe it. When did all this happen? I guess I wasn't paying attention, but all of a sudden, everything seems to be out of control.
Building has been slow. You know, commercial building is very slow. Residential, it totally sucks. There's no monies being freed up, not in the areas where I'm concerned with or where I live.
There is a nervousness that's there as far as the whole economy is concerned. I think we're going to go through a Christmas that is not going to be very good, and I fear that that could then have a domino effect where it'll get worse.
An unstable job market is the top concern. Union electrician Jack Lydon had been working for different contractors on short-term jobs for years. In September, he finally got the city job he had been hoping for. But 36-year-old Leiden, the father of 3, says even a city job is not secure anymore.
You're reading the paper every day that the Daley administration is looking for cutbacks. They're not getting money from the state or federal money. So he has to cut back, and I understand that. And certainly if he cuts back in my department, I'm sure being the new guy hired on, I'd probably be the first to let go. If I do get cut from there, then I would have to go back to my union hall, and there's about 900 guys out of work there, so I'll go to the bottom of the list, and I might end up waiting 6-8 months for a job.
The uncertain job market has created stress in many Chicago families. It took Raphael and Gladys 6 months to find a job, despite a return to school for a master's degree. He now works in the city's finance department. His wife, Olga, a teacher, got her master's degree after graduating from college in Puerto Rico. Both thought by now their financial situation would be much better than it is. But a promised salary increase that did not come through for Olga has soured their outlook on the economy.
This year, I didn't receive my salary increase the way I expected it. It was 7%. We just received 3% increase this year. Next year, I don't even know if we will get one, increase. I don't know.
Why do you think it didn't happen?
Well, in general terms, the political situation is very bad. The school system itself has many, problems with the budget and everything else. And, it's bad time for everybody. That's basically the reason why we are in bad shape, in the school system. The economy is bad, everywhere, and the school system is part of that, problem too.
Families like the Ewings have felt the impact of the unstable job market and the fear of pay cuts. Sylvia Ewing, a social worker and a single mother of 2, has made a marked change in her spending patterns.
The unstable economy makes me cautious. It also makes me more conscious of serious long-range planning. I'm raising my children alone. I'm responsible for them. I have to stay healthy. I have to stay employed.
Are you changing your lifestyle to a certain extent?
I am. I'm not writing checks. I'm not, let's get specific, I'm not using credit cards. I just refuse to pay that interest. I'm much more mindful of values and less quick to make any purchases.
Are there major purchases you've put off, for instance?
Yes, there are. And the bad part is I don't quite know when I'm going to put them back on the list.
Like what, for instance?
Well, I'd like a new television set. I have a television set I got secondhand for $45, and it's green, and I'd like a new one. And it's not like the end of the world, but you'd kind of like to have at least a new one. So that's one thing that I've put off.
Paula Smith has changed her spending habits, too. Smith got her first trade union job through an affirmative action program 12 years ago. She lost her job as a welder when the U.S. Steel plant closed down, and now works on and manages small construction projects. But construction work has taken a big hit during the recession, and Smith is cautious.
I think twice before I spend. I do more entertaining things at home. The kind of stuff that I guess that you used to do when people weren't into being out and spending the money at the show or going to different hotels or resorts, that sort of stuff. And, with the way building and things are going, new construction, they are building hotels and whatnot. I mean, I can't afford to go there. I might go down there and work, and that project, as long as it lasts, then I'll have a little bit of money, but when it's over, it's done.
And it's not just individual consumers. Business owners, too, have become much more careful about the way they spend their company's dollars. Ashley Ross laid off 1/3 of the workforce last year at his plastic fabricating plant. He says the faltering economy has changed the way he does business.
It forced us to look at our situation in a different light than we had been before. When things are good, some other things tend to slip under the rug and you don't look at them. When things turn bad, you start to review things. we have certain areas of our business that are involved in consumer products. We're faced with a decision as to, do we build inventory for those areas? Do we anticipate that business is going to be as good as last year or better? And they're very hard decisions to make, and I'm not sure what we're going to do.
When do you have to make those decisions?
Probably pretty soon. And at some point in time, we'll just have to get to the point of deciding what we're going to do as far as inventory.
What does your gut tell you now?
My gut tells me that that's the one area that I may be a little bit more conservative, which is not what I usually am.
Donna Merrick had to make decisions on what kind of Christmas inventory to buy for her gift shop last summer. Because her customer base is in the affluent North Shore suburbs, she felt they would spend the same amount of money they have always spent at Christmas. Now, she's not so sure.
My feeling was that I was going to just go all out for Christmas, and that is exactly what I did.
And what's happened to your assessment of the economy since then?
Well, the thing that is a little bit frightening about it is that everything is very much slower now than it was last year. Last year, people started buying, I would say shortly after Halloween. And this year, I've got my corporate orders in, which of course are very reassuring to me because that means that the bills will be paid, but the walk-in business has been very slow. So that hasn't really started, and that makes me a little nervous.
Could you pay your suppliers now if they all came asking for it?
No, I couldn't. The thing is that everybody's sort of in the same boat that I am, so they know that it isn't me. I'm not a deadbeat. Best wishes isn't a bad bet. It's just the way everybody is going right now. And so they've all been understanding and very patient.
How do you feel getting those telephone calls, though?
Not good. That isn't a good feeling at all because you do feel crummy. And particularly if you've been somebody who has always paid in a timely fashion. You know, and a good deal of what happens here is kind of done with some lead time involved, and you know that, but you always anticipate being able to turn the merchandise over.
Much of the pessimism in Chicago seems to stem from the perception that Washington either does not understand or does not know what to do to improve the economy.
The president is always saying that the economy is not that bad, that it's improving, but we don't see that. We don't see the improvement. I don't know what he's talking about. You know, I would like to see some signs of improvement, but I haven't seen at this point any improvement of the economy. When you go to the stores, you know, I mean, you hardly see people buying now. In our situation, when we want to buy something, we have to plan ahead of time, save the money, look for the, you know, sales and the bargains and everything else, and then we buy. But not, you know, we don't have the money to spend like crazy, like, you know, we don't do that. We plan everything.
And I think it almost, with the president, with the bailout, let's say, of the S&Ls, and then say issues of Russia, money supposedly going to the Russians, you know, I would think it kind of builds a lot of resentment in Americans because you say, doesn't charity begin at home? I mean, what about Americans who are, you know, suffering here? I mean, what is the president doing? I mean, on this whole issue of an extension, you know, it took some pressure for him to really come around on that.
Whether it's a real or perceived, I think there's a feeling that there's no one in charge. And I think you see the effects of the economy without a coordinated response coming out of the government. That does not create confidence as far as consumers are concerned. People may well have some funds available, but they don't know what's going to happen to the economy, and I think part of that relates to their perception of the government.
I hear people being very accusatory. I personally do not think that the state of the economy is any one person's fault, nor do I feel that it is any one person's responsibility. And I don't think George Bush is any more culpable than, you know, Reagan or before him or before him. I think it's something that builds up over a period of time and is due to just lots and lots of stuff. So I think it would be very difficult to be the president of the United States, but I don't feel that he is the only one that should be held accountable, and I don't think it's fair. And it wouldn't matter to me who the president was. I mean, really, it wouldn't matter if it was George Bush or whoever might succeed him. The Congress really has not been accountable, and I really feel that they've been, in some ways, more responsible.
Do you have any thoughts on what could turn it around?
Clear policies, more optimism, people being more encouraged to buy because they're not afraid they're going to lose their jobs. Some government changes, I think, have to turn it around. It can't really start from the ground up. It's not that kind of thing because it wasn't created that way.
None of that pessimism bodes well for the Christmas season.
What about Christmas? Are you going to... They can't have my money. I'm sorry. No way. No way. You know, Christmas for me is an important time of year. And yeah, I give it Christmas time, but no, I'm sorry. I can't give it to the retailers. And it's not because I don't want to. It's because it just is not logical. It does not make sense. It really doesn't.
There'll be Christmas at our house for sure. And I'm certainly not starving. My family's not well provided for. But you never know down the road. You know, as Mike Ditka says, in the game of life, there are no guarantees. So there's certainly no guarantees here either.
Now to two men who earn their livings polling Americans on issues like the economy. Jeffrey Garin is a Democratic pollster and the president of Hart Research. He recently finished a survey of American views on the economy and the next election for the Council on Competitiveness. Neil Newhouse is a pollster with 7 years' experience at the Republican Worthland Group before forming his own firm this year, Public Opinion Strategies. Neil Newhouse, is the pessimism of those consumers in Chicago reflected in your polling?
Absolutely. It's clear the anxiousness about the economy and about individuals' jobs are having a direct impact on Americans' pocketbooks. Relevant to that gentleman's last point, we found in the LA Times recent survey showed that over half of Americans, 50% of Americans, say they'll be spending less money this holiday season than in previous years. Combine that with the unease about jobs and employment. Our recent polling shows that 65% of Americans have said that they've talked to their friends or neighbors about the fact they could lose their jobs in the next year. That's an extraordinary number.
How does that compare with the past? Is that very high?
It's extremely high. It's extremely high considering the fact that unemployment rate is still around 6.8% in the country.
Jeffrey Garin, what about your polling? Any different?
No, exactly the same. And the interesting thing is the voters have figured out a long time ago that the economy was in trouble. I think what's changed now is they are worried by the persistence of the bad news. I think that they are worried, as one lady said in your clip, about the lack of leadership for dealing with the problem. But it's clear that people are worried. It's not just blue-collar people. It's not just working-class people. It's across the range of America economically, professional, college-educated. Everybody thinks these are harder times and that it's gotten to them personally.
Is there evidence, Mr. Garin, that this pessimism or anxiety or the combination is growing?
Well, we know that even in the past month that about 10 points more say the economy is bad than in October, based on recent network polls, that more people think that we are in a more serious recession than a month ago. So that change has occurred. Again, I think people have been pretty downbeat on the economy for a while. I think the two biggest changes, or three biggest changes really, is A, it's starting to affect them personally and they are feeling it more personally now. B, they are becoming more pessimistic about our ability to get out of these problems. And C, and I think most importantly, they are getting to be very pessimistic about whether we have the leadership to deal with the difficulties we're facing.
Do you have any data, Mr. Newhouse, to suggest that it's growing or accelerating, this anxiety?
I agree with what Jeff said regarding the pessimism regarding the country. I think the pessimism is maybe growing by 8 or 10 points over the last couple of months. But what really seems to be moving is the lack of confidence in Americans, of Americans in their elected officials and in government to solve the problems. And right now there are numbers that demonstrate that show that Americans believe that President Bush is to blame for this by only 15% of Americans compared to 64% of Americans believe Congress is to blame. But I think to some extent our focus groups and what the voters out there said and the shoppers you interviewed said they didn't really care who was to blame. They want the problems fixed. And it's a frustration that the agenda, the domestic economic agenda, is not being addressed.
You poll normally for Republicans. Is there any difference between what Republican voters or consumers think about this and Democrats?
Republicans are a bit more optimistic about the economy. They obviously approve of the job President Bush is doing by a much wider margin. But when push comes to shove, when voters are asked, do you think there's a recession or not, Republicans agree like everyone else. Higher income voters agree like lower income voters. Only 12% of Americans in the country believe there's not a recession going on.
Jeffrey Garin, any difference between Republicans and Democrats in your survey?
This is where the bad news for George Bush comes in, is that for a long while, when Democrats and then independents concluded that the economy was bad, the Republicans were still hoping and still trusting in George Bush. Now I think the big turn has been that the Republican voters are saying, no, the economy is in trouble. I think now for the first month, the plurality of Republican voters are saying that the economy's gotten worse rather than better, and expect the economy to be worse than it is now.
Mr. Newhouse, to go back to the point you were making a moment ago, it's true that over the last few months, the unemployment figures and the inflation figures, referring to cost of products and to anxiety about jobs, while they may have gone up and down slightly, basically haven't got that much worse. Why is the anxiety or the pessimism about the situation growing in that case?
To some extent, I like to start back at I guess, during the Persian Gulf War. I think the Persian Gulf War and this country's success in that war raised expectations that the same type of forces could be marshaled in this country to defeat some of our domestic agendas, to try to take care of education, environment, and help the economy. And I think to some extent what has been President Bush's defining moment, and a positive defining moment in the Persian Gulf War, has now raised expectations so that when the economy is not addressed and when Americans see the recession continuing and the economy stagnating, I think it drives the pessimism in the country up. Americans are less likely to be optimistic. They simply don't see the government addressing the problem, so the recession will be addressed or will finish in the next 6 months or so.
Mr. Garin, how do you comment on that? I mean, the unemployment figures, while they go up and down, they haven't gotten any worse, and nor has inflation. In fact, inflation's been very much under control this year. I'm referring to the man who said everything was so expensive now.
Well, I think the Persian Gulf War does play an important role in this, but a different one than Neil suggests, which is that before we doubled our troops in the Persian Gulf, people were already feeling very pessimistic about the economy and the state of the nation. The Persian Gulf was a temporary lift in public opinion and attitudes toward the direction of the country. In October of 1990, people were very downbeat. We had an artificial high off of the Persian Gulf. We are now back to normal here, so that that's part of it. The second thing is that George Bush has been his own worst enemy, and I think he is, in fact, creating a bigger problem in terms of people's attitudes, because he's out there on the golf course or whatever saying, hey, don't worry about it, and people are very worried. You've heard them say that, and they worry more when they hear the chief executive saying that there is no problem, because they know that there is one.
What's it going to do to turn this pessimism around, Mr. Garin?
Well, I think first and foremost there needs to be a sense that the leadership is taking control. Look, and the Republicans say, well, if there is a short-term turnaround or an uptick in the economy, it's all going to be better for George Bush. I don't think that's true. I think the voters are smart about this. Is what they're saying is this is not a short-term problem. We have problems really at the fundamentals and at the heart of the economy in terms of our position in the world, in terms of education, in terms of trade, in terms of whether we're training our